All right, we're ready for our next panel. And as they get seated, I'll just share that we have one more former Wall Street executive. This is Gaby Rowe, and she, along with Craig Jonas, they're also some of our sponsors for whom we are so grateful to today. And her organization is called Grow Associates. Also, she just finished a marathon last weekend in Boulder, so we just got to give her a little plug for that. So welcome, and she's going to introduce her panel and this important topic. And earlier when we were talking about broadband, connectivity, Indigenous people, people who are our rural leaders, a lot of what this group is going to cover touches on all those things and how we can transform a lot of the barriers that keep people disconnected. So let's give a big round of applause to Gaby and this panel, and so grateful for the music that we had from lunch.
Thank you so much, Carol, and thank you to everyone who is with us today. I am always amazed when I come to a GlobalMindED event how many new people and I meet and how inspired I always feel from everything we hear. So again, thank you all for being here. Well, I am very honored to introduce my panel. I'm actually going to let them each introduce themselves. But we've heard a lot about barriers. We've heard a lot about personal history, those barriers that can get in the way, whether those negative barriers encourage or discourage. We really wanted to focus on what some of those environmental barriers are, and some of us refer to them as environmental/infrastructure. Those societal barriers that really can get in the way of that forward progress. And each of us will come to that from a different perspective. I think we heard this morning already about the barrier of connectivity, the barriers of technology. And before we get into that and dive deep, though, I'm going to first ask each of you to introduce yourselves, a little bit about your background, and the work that you do, and then we will jump into the topic. I'm going to start with you, Preston, and we'll pass it along the way.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Preston James. I am a native New Yorker, so it's good to be back home. Thank you for having me here today, Gaby. Thank you. I am a 20-year Dell veteran. So I started with Dell in 1993. And I worked there until 2014, where I took an early retirement from Dell. As a result of that, I ended up getting involved in the tech startup community in Austin, Texas. And a little bit, we heard a little bit about being the only one in the room, and I was the only black startup mentor in Austin, Texas, and I found myself being the only black angel investor and did not see a lot of people of color or women in the tech startup entrepreneur community. And so as a result, I started a nonprofit organization called Divinc. Basically, it's an entrepreneur support organization that supports BIPOC and women, early stage tech entrepreneurs, getting them from the pre-seed stage to the seed stage. And we've been doing that since 2016 in Austin and also in Houston, Texas. And we, operate a premier accelerator program throughout the United States that supports BIPOC and women entrepreneurship. And so the end goal for Divinc is essentially to create social economic equity through entrepreneurship and really address closing the racial wealth gap through entrepreneurship. So that's our mission. And again, thank you for being
here. See, that's a New Yorker for you. Yeah. We had this thing last night talking about who's from New York, who's from the great country of Illinois, and louder. But we were very loud. So, well, good afternoon. I am Dr. Kimberly McClain. I am the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. My office is Congressional and Intergovernmental Relations. I will say at HUD, it is an absolutely amazing and critical organization that really services every aspect of our lives as Americans, and even beyond. It services our global community. One of the things that people may not be aware of is that we have a philanthropic arm. Our philanthropic arm focuses on our global partners and the partnerships that we can build so that we build a strong, sustainable global community in every aspect. One of the things that you may not know is that we also host students as well as our partners across the globe to go to some of our American cities, such as Seattle, and really how do we build capacity, capability in our communities, and how are they then able to take those lessons learned back to their communities. We do have a liaison here at the United Nations, for which I'm extremely grateful. I'm always trying to get them to let me come up, but for some reason they want to send me some other place in the United States or some other part of our world. A little bit about me, other than the fact that Carol keeps me on time, and I do like to talk. So I've never met a stranger. I was good to talk to Victoria. I got a whole lot of work for you, so just, I see you. Really what brings me to GlobalMind, other than Carol, is really that opportunity to be a part of something bigger than myself. I won't go into the bio because everybody can read if reading is fundamental. But what I have discovered is that being one of the only, being the first in a lot of the organizations also comes with a responsibility. It comes with showing up and bringing young people to the table when others may not. It comes in showing up and bringing each other and our authentic selves to the table. And so really that is why I am here, and hopefully able to have a really good conversation, share a lot about what we're doing at GlobalMind and at the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Wow, this is an amazing conference. I don't know why you guys have me here. I got to tell you, this is this has been incredible. I'm so great to be here. I'm Michael Woods. Quick background: I'm a farm kid from Indiana. Came here for finance. Started here in New York. Met my wife here, and grew just up through the system, and became the CEO of Deutsche Asset Management, about $800 billion. After that, the Rothschild family gave me a call and ran all of their business here in the Americas and all cross-border to Asia. Became very involved with Korea. Now on the Korea Society as their chair of their development committee, and enjoy that very much. And in 2018, while working at Rothschild and having a wonderful, I was hopeful to the end of my career, decided to start my own family office and start investing and doing a little bit more than just making money for institutions. We did private, we did public, we did everything under the sun, but it just became less fulfilling. And I wanted to be more creative, as I think you mentioned earlier. When you get put in that box in the financial world, it's just repeat. It's cut and paste. You're doing the same trade. You're raising the same capital. You're doing the same investing. You're so risk-oriented in what you're doing for each different client. It just becomes, paper mache. You're just folding and going again. So as I started to get into different businesses and buying 10 to 30% of different businesses, I wanted to really focus on three things. One being innovation and technology, which I just love that area. Secondly is impact, and as a farmer, I really wanted to give back to the farming community. And then third, a lot of that commercial development that's around that. So we do that. So on the impact side, we work a lot with industrial hemp, which is food, fibers, grains, not gummies, not cannabinoids. And if you do that, fantastic, it's all good. Right? But we're working on, there to help the American farmer directly with the USDA, Department of Agriculture, in terms of helping them to find capital, because we're talking about barriers, and it is intimidating, and it is hard to find capital. And secondly, there's been so much growth, and we'll probably talk more about this, on proper carbon credit and carbon sequestration, and how to monetize more of what you're doing in farming, and also with indigenous tribes and indigenous communities, helping them to find a way to monetize their land to be able to bring money into that community to help with all of the needs that they may have. So a lot of crossover from finance, tech, and agriculture is what we do. So it's great to be here, and thank you again.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. DeAndre Weaver. I spent the last 18 years trying to pay back my 7th grade science teacher, Carolyn Curry. When I was in 7th grade, Carolyn Curry pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, I know what you did to Mrs. Brown in 6th grade, and I'm not going to let you do it to me." And from that point, she took me under her wings. She knew I had a skill with using computers, so she allowed me to teach her and her colleagues how to input grades from the green grade book in school into the computer. She also advocated for me to get into a high school that I did not qualify for, because a lot of the times that I was spending in elementary school was busy developing a website for the school. It was running actually a grant that we received from a museum to utilize computer technology into learning. So they gave me the opportunity to do that. And she advocated for me. She called the superintendent in Chicago Public Schools at the time and said, "I have this kid that has to get into this school." And he listened to her. And at that moment, I knew I wanted to be a superintendent. So for the next 20 years, I worked in public education as a teacher, as an assistant principal, as a high school principal, as an assistant superintendent, and as a school superintendent in Illinois and in Texas. I currently the Chief Digital Equity Officer at Digital Promise Global, where I get an opportunity to blend what I love about teaching and learning and technology to help advance learning for all. And essentially, our organization, Digital Promise, was founded under the federal government, actually, under the Bush administration, and it was enacted under the Obama administration. And for the last 13 years or so, we've been working at the intersection of research, practice, and technology. So we're really excited to be here today and excited for this panel. Gaby?
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Quick background. I am, as Carol said, former investment banker, 3rd-generation educator who vowed I was never, ever going to go into education, and I like to say was going to be the first gainfully employed member of my family. So I went to Wall Street, God help me. But resonant with what we've heard, I was always the only one in the room. I was the only woman, and I chose areas of banking where I was especially the only woman, went into high-yield junk finance in the early 80s, and fast forward through then many years of going back to run my family's school and landing full square back in education. I now run a consulting practice that is made up exclusively of women, and they are all former educators. And we work at the intersection of technology and education, advising both Fortune 100 technology companies in the private sector and large states and counties on how to bridge the digital divide and how to play a role in that at bridging. And I think that's going to really speak to the barriers that we're going to talk about now. So I will have to put my teacher hat back on multiple times, though, during this panel. And the first is, before we can really understand how to transform barriers, I think it's really important to identify them. So we're here to talk about those environmental infrastructure barriers. So how would each of you, how would you define them? Name for this group what you would call one of those or two of those environmental and infrastructure barriers. I'm going to start down with you, Dre.
Given my background, I think public education is one. And I think it's a huge opportunity to do something that we've not done before. Our system currently works as it has been designed, and many students, many of whom look like me, are not getting the opportunities to be best prepared for post-secondary life, to survive or to exist in this economy, let alone this new digital economy. And so I think one of the areas that we're really concerned with at Digital Promise is the digital competency of our educators, of our teachers, of our leaders. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw so many examples of how unprepared we were to deliver teaching and learning at a level that would resonate with students, that would yield the outcomes that we're looking for. And so one of the environmental barriers that we see is certainly how teachers are prepared. And I know there's a lot of higher ed folks in the room, so I'm so glad that you're here. I think that we think that there are more opportunities to better prepare educators for the realities of what's existing in the classroom right now. The realities around social emotional learning, obviously the realities around the use of technology, but also better prepare teachers and leaders pedagogically. Because a lot of the barriers are just foundational. It's not resonating, and we're not seeing educators be able to meet the needs of all the students in the classroom. We also know that it's extremely impossible for an educator to meet the 30 or 25 diverse needs of students in one classroom at one time, and we see the role of technology playing a significant role in addressing that gap. So I think one barrier that we're really interested in addressing is the preparedness of educators to use technology to do something that we've not been able to do before.
Thank you. Well, barriers really for us would be three pieces, right? You have your digital barrier, you have your physical infrastructure barrier, and then of course you have your financial. Sorry, somebody's calling me that doesn't need to talk right now. So those three areas we've tried to help where we could. You know, the physical infrastructure, we really do a lot around tech hubs. If you're all very familiar with the Science and Chips Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Build Back Better side. Of course, the IRA having nothing to do with inflation. You know, I know it comes from government, but really had nothing to do with inflation. But, you know, on those three pieces, when you're seeing the inability on the digital side, I know we're going to talk about broadband a bit here, so I won't touch on that. On the housing side, I won't touch on that. That's on the physical side. But on the corporate side, in terms of access to great jobs, coming out of college and staying local because you don't want to move really far away to find a great job. Being able to have a community, an industrial and commercial community that coexists with the residential community where it wasn't there 5-10 years ago. So when you look at the really great things that are going on with the federal and state side right now to try to inject capital for these different technology hubs for critical infrastructure and critical technology manufacturing to bring it back here to the United States gives great opportunity for access to that gap that we've always had in many different rural communities, in many different suburbs where a lot of people have gone to, you know, since the COVID pandemic. So we'll probably come back to this a little bit, but the big thing here is that when you've got projects that are being funded 35 to 45% on grants from federal and state, that divide now is really going to, you know, come together if done properly, if coordinated right. And that financial side on the private, that's the public side, you still got to raise 65 to another 55% of that project. On the private side, how do you make sure that that private-public partnership between those areas works properly, and you're also getting the right technology. You're getting the right R&D partnerships with universities. You're creating STEM high schools right beside, which we've done in Florida. You can look it up, Neo City in Florida, one of the first STEM high schools in Central Florida from this project, from the Neo City project, and we're really proud of that, and we're expanding it from 250 students to now 500 students per class, and we'll continue to do that. R&D centers with Central Florida University and Florida State and others to make sure that those kind of objectives of corporations are being coordinated with academia. So a lot of barriers out there, but a lot of great initiatives that are going on to really close that.
All right, he stole my thunder on the CHIPS, the IRA, the Build Back Better. I mean, what other good congressional thing that we have to say? I'm just teasing you. Seriously, at HUD, in terms of the barriers, we actually look at a number of them, one of which is boosting wealth building. We've heard a lot about it today. Is how do we build foundational wealth? How do we build generational wealth? How do we increase home ownership? For a lot of us, and for our parents and our parents' parents, having a home was your source of wealth. So those are two that we see at HUD that are intertwined and that we are working to ensure that not even from just a pure grant-making perspective, but also how do we build knowledge? Knowledge is power. When you understand how to go and purchase a home, what are the resources that are available to you? what are the challenges that you're going to face? How do we build capability and capacity with our partners across the financial sector? One of the things that I will share is that how does it has a 2.7 trillion, for those who talk to me, I will say that until I'm blue in the face. But we do have a $2.7 trillion profit center through Ginnie Mae, through FHA. How do we partner with industry? How do we partner with academia, with our nonprofit sector, with our private and nonprofit sectors, to ensure that people have a foundational understanding on how to access? Because without that foundational understanding, some of the other barriers they're not achievable. Another thing that we're trying to do from a physical infrastructure perspective is build stronger, sustainable communities. We, as of this year, have about $57 billion, that is with the B, in disasters that have occurred across the United States. We are not talking about abroad. That's just here locally, and it continues to grow. Part of that is due to our impact as human beings on our environment. So when our communities are impacted by disasters, how do we help our communities? How do we educate them? How do we give them the grants when it is available? How do we partner with industry, nonprofit? I will talk to anybody and everybody to ensure that when we are building our communities back, we are building them back better and more sustainable for the future, because when the next disaster comes, it should not wipe out a community. And in reality, a lot of the communities that are faced are Black and brown communities across our southern belt. Those are communities, even in Kentucky. I was in Jackson, Kentucky about 3 months ago. They are still trying to recover from a storm that occurred in 2020. We still have people that are living in sheds. No one should have to wonder where their house is going to be. How am I going to get an education while I'm still trying to find a home and meeting just those basic needs of life? So as we talk about the physical infrastructure and all of our barriers today, those are the things that, from my seat, that I look at. How do I ensure that communities, all communities, are served in the right way?
All right, I'll take a slightly different spin. In the entrepreneurship world, I think, we look at tech entrepreneurship somewhat differently. And if you look at the barriers to entry, like when I first started back in 2014, the lack of, BIPOC and women entrepreneurs in the space. And when we talk to entrepreneurs and talk to leaders in the entrepreneur ecosystem, it really breaks down really to one word, right, which is access. And we're hearing that all day long, and education and how is everything is access. You break that down further, and it's access to education, right? In entrepreneurship, there is a science to the methodology of how to build a successful tech company, right? It's not, I'm just going to go and do this on the whim and hopefully everything works. It ain't going to work that way. So there is a methodology. There are best practices. They need to be taught, right? And, so we need to teach those. The second major barrier essentially is getting access to the human social capital. And what do I mean by that? It's not, the talent, yes, we need access to the talent. But we need access to the people who've been there and done that before, right? We get that knowledge and we get that wisdom, we share that. I can tell you in the entrepreneurship community, there are people who are in the same community, do not know each other, have never met, right? And I'm in Austin. Austin is not the biggest city on the planet. People are just do not know that the guy right next to you just sold 2 companies in the last, 15 years. That's the guy or the person, the woman you need to be with. But they're not connected because of the different backgrounds and demographics. The third thing is obviously access to financial capital, which is a big, big issue, right? Women founders get less than 2% of venture capital. they make up 50% of the US population. If that's not upside down, I don't know what is, okay? But part of what I'm sharing with you, right, for example, a major barrier, I believe, is the lack of data, the lack of data insights. So the people who are in a position to help and make decisions to affect change are not, they don't have the insights and the data to say, oh, or the measurements, right, to actually affect change. So we have very complex issues like education and entrepreneurship and inclusive. If we don't have the data and the metrics, what are we doing? We're encouraging status quo when we don't have the insights. So bringing forth the data and the insights so we can say, hey, look, the racial wealth gap is this, and the paths to closing the racial wealth gap are through home ownership, through entrepreneurship, through education. How do we effectively do that more? How do we reallocate resources to affect real change in the future? So the barriers, one of the key barriers, I think, is we need to continue to not just produce information and insights, but also to share them in an effective way to go drive what Chris and Michael were talking about earlier, what the outcomes that we're really trying to achieve.
Thank you. And all of you have mentioned a few programs already, a few initiatives that are beginning to help take down some of these barriers and affect them. But I want each of you to talk about a bright light. And I'm going to start first with some pools of capital that are out there. We know there's $42 billion that's been allocated to states specifically to address broadband. There's another $100 million specifically just as part of that to talk about digital equity. So I'm going to first start with you, Dre. If you could address, what are some bright lights and how that money is being spent, and then I'd like to also to pop over to you, Dr. McClain, and talk a little bit about where you're seeing the money go that's actually working, that's making a difference.
I think on the public education front, because of the pandemic, we're seeing districts now recognize the need for technology investments. I think an area of opportunity is the sustainability of those investments and refresh cycles and opportunities for states to procure devices for school districts at better costs to make those available. I think one of the bright spots, though, at the programmatic level that I'm actually responsible for at Digital Promise is our partnership with Verizon. For the last decade, we've been supporting Title I middle schools and high schools with purchasing devices, iPads, Chromebooks for all teachers and students, access, 24/7 access to the Verizon network for free. And then for 4 years, we'll provide professional learning and support for teachers and leaders on how to integrate that technology into teaching and learning so that the tech is not seen as an aside, as a dessert, but it's seen as integrated with the main dish. And we think that integration, the use of technology with the pedagogy of strong learner-centered teaching and learning can actually move the needle for learners. The ability to personalize learning, to create ubiquitous opportunities for learning, new opportunities to credential learning that is beyond the traditional transcript. Opportunities to take advantage of emerging technology like generative artificial intelligence in a really meaningful instructional way so that students can learn more and learn more deeply so that ultimately they're able to leave the K-12 system much more prepared for life outside of the K-12 environment. I read a recent study recently where I think 92 or 94% of all jobs now require some digital skill usage, and half of African American and Latinx people lack digital skills. And so we know that there's an opportunity. So the programs that we sponsor and really support help build capacity, help address the access issue, help support the adoption, and truly help build digital competency and readiness in our learners.
So where do I see it working? I will say that I'm truly blessed to see a lot of the initiatives that HUD has put forward. One of the most popular and one of the most successful initiatives that we have out there is our Choice Neighborhoods initiative. Why is it successful? Because what it does is it takes the social determinants of health and applies that to building strong communities. Through the Choice Initiative, beginning of this year, we provided a $50 million grant to one community, in specific Birmingham, Alabama. What that grant does is that it empowers the community, it empowers the state to be able to say, this is what I know this community needs. In the case of Birmingham, Alabama, it's not just building affordable housing, it's also looking at what are those green spaces that Birmingham, Alabama needs. We know people need green spaces. We know kids need green spaces to flourish. You need a peaceful mindset, as we've heard earlier today. It also looks at how do I bring in community centers, grocery stores, schools. All of those are necessary components to building a healthy, successful community and a sustainable community. So that's where I've seen it working at its best. There are another thing that we do. We mentioned the Affordable Connectivity Program. One of the things that those people who are living in, whether it's Section 8 or public housing, it's ensuring that if they apply for and take on the additional resources that come with the Affordable Connectivity Program, that that money, that grant, is not utilized against them in their calculation of need. One of the other things that I think is also working, and we recently rolled it out, is ensuring that people's criminal history is not utilized against them. The reality is that people make mistakes. Life happens. For those people who are trying to get back on their feet, the last thing that we want them to do is go back to the place that they came from. Rental history, so taking away that barrier to ensure that your criminal history is not held against you as you're trying to get back onto your feet. That is critical, and that it reduces the barriers to affordable housing, whether it's rental or whether you're trying to purchase. So those are just a couple of things that I see that's working well.
Awesome. So Preston, you talked a little bit about that need for that learning in those lessons. So quickly tell us a success story. Tell us a story of someone, a woman of color who has come and didn't have that access to information, and how you opened a door for them through that program.
We've had, several Black women, Latino women who have come, with ideas, amazing ideas, from organic cosmetics, right, to small business support, to another founder that came up with a product that basically helps women who are breastfeeding and converts the milk into a powdered form, right, so that it can preserve the nutrients.
Who then ended up on Shark Tank.
They were on Shark Tank. But the beauty of watching these women build these companies is the confidence they build over time, right? They come with personal confidence, but not necessarily confidence in their business. And they build that confidence in business with the support that they've been surrounded by, and then they continue to have successes. The other thing that I think is wonderful too is watching those women become mentors and advisors for the young women that are coming up behind them, right? So if you think about it, the wisdom and the experience of these women that they are able to pass on to the next generation, it accelerates the process of learning that much faster, right? So we have to encourage the success of these women who are experiencing the ups and downs, the experience of the negative questions when they walk into a room that they get that men don't get, right? And to be able to share that and prepare the next generation or even their peers for how they can actually counter, right, and become more successful. So really, for us to scale, we have to really just reach beyond, for example, just Divinc. It's not just about Divinc, right? It's about our peer organizations throughout the United States sharing these stories to be able to accelerate and scale how we lift up BIPOC and women entrepreneurs in the scale. Because 50% of our population, they need to be running this country, right? In terms of entrepreneurship, and I just put that out there, right? And we are all in a position to be able to do that. And I'm excited to see the collaboration in this room that's going to actually make that happen, because that is the only way that we are going to be able to lift us up and move us forward faster.
Well, I'm hearing those themes of agency that we heard from James and Carla, but also that exponential effect, that how can we add 2 and 2 and end up with 12? So thank you for that. So I'm going to put that educator hat back on one more time, and we have you all trapped here in the room, so you're all going to get homework. So what would each of you task as a homework assignment to the people in this room that they need to do, the one thing that they need to do, and not just take away from today, but going back to that word of action we heard earlier, what do they need to do when they leave this room and go back into their lives to help effectively remove the barriers that we're talking about? And I'm gonna start back at the other end again. I'm gonna go to you, Dre. So what's your homework assignment for the people in this room?
Well, I think if you're in higher ed specifically, to really examine the teacher prep programs and the way educational leaders are prepared, and to see if the ability to lead and educate in this increasingly digital society is relevant or represented in the curricular experiences for those future educators and leaders. Are they prepared to lead from a learner-centered perspective? Are they prepared to deal with some of the mental health issues or some of the social determinants that exist that many teachers are being overwhelmed by and leaving the profession as a result of? And so I think that is the huge homework assignment that I would give to our higher ed folks, and then our corporate partners and those that invest. I think it's a great time. Now is the right time to invest in public education in terms of resources, volunteering with your people, mentoring both educators and students, being an active light. I think your presence is greatly needed right now. And then those funders, more public-private partnerships that can solve some of the challenges that being in public education with a lot of red tape and bureaucracy kind of prevent innovation. And so having public-private partnerships that can spur new ways of thinking and doing. Love the idea that was shared earlier today with the community owning a building and then reaping the revenue from the school district to reinvest into the school. It's a great idea. There's so many other ideas that can change the way educators teach or students experience learning. I think those public-private partnerships help accelerate that happening.
Good point. On the women population percentage, let's not also forget that over 2/3 of personal wealth in the United States is controlled by women. Right? So the money is also controlled, right? So it's not just the population, it's the control of what's going to happen with that money, which is so exciting. And I got actually 2 takeaways here. So I have twin girls, 13 years old today, so I have to get home for dinner. Got up way too early this morning. Oh yeah, definitely got to get the books. But one of the things that my wife and I talked about to help prepare them, and who has kids here that are younger than 20? All right, great. Or even older than 20. The thing that might really help that I actually learned from a colleague of mine is as they start to get to be about 14 years old or so, because if you want to pay them, of course, that's the federal rule. You can't pay a child until they're 14. I just want to be, on tap here for regulations. We're getting taped. So the thing that you might want to think about is let them listen to your board meetings. Let them be involved. Let them see the board package. right? So that they can get educated, they can lose fear. Right? If you know the Latin term sine metu, which I wanted to name one of my children, that name sine metu Woods I thought would be great. Sine metu means without fear. Teach them to not have fear for the unknown, for things that might be intimidating, etc. Put your time into them, but also get them exposed to so many other professionals that are so good at what they do, they lose fear by being interacted. Then secondly, I would tell you to please read up on these wonderful federal grants that are really, they're procured to be public-private partnerships, right? That's what they're all about. But if you don't know the pieces that you can access for your company, for your organization, for your school, for a new construction program, for charities, et cetera, it's all in there. Right? There's requirements for sustainable energy before you procure any public money. There's requirements for workforce training, for education, for R&D partnerships with universities, high schools, et cetera. Please read these. Understand where you're missing out on an opportunity, because right now we are in an unprecedented time of public assistance to enhance America through so many areas. $2 trillion between Build Back Better, Uninflation IRA Act, and the Science and CHIPS Act. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Make sure you understand it. Start reading on it.
He did my heart good. I don't even know what to say. My homework for this will also be two-pronged. One for everyone in this room. Partnerships. If someone, regardless of whether it's public sector, private sector, nonprofit, academia, you pick the sector. If they say reach out to me, please reach out to me. That's the one big thing. If you pick on my card, for those who I've given it to, it's a shameless plug. I have a digital card, it's a shameless plug, because the resources that we were just talking about, there is a complete resource guide on everything that we do, from programs to initiatives, and who to access, not just what it is with a nice pretty description and nice pretty pictures, but go on to that. Please reach out. If you can't find me, I can guarantee you Carol has me on speed dial. Home, office, work, it just doesn't matter. But reach out to those partners who are willing to do that. I know that it can be challenging accessing the maze of what's the federal government, but we are here to help you. It's not lip service. I will tell you, it is not lip service for President Biden. It is not lip service for Secretary Fudge, and it is definitely not lip service for me. So if you tell me that you need help, I'm more than happy to help you. If I don't know, I will tell you I don't know. But then let's go find a partner together. It drives my team nuts, but such is life. The second part of that is continue to advocate, lift up, and bring your folks to the table. Whether it is the junior people who are just coming to intern at your organizations, or whether it's the students as academics that we are sending out. I take interns unashamedly. I will take them all year long. Please send them to me, CIR@hud.gov. That's a shameless plug. But I say that because they are innovative. They have energy. They have insight into how, and they have a lot of thoughts, as our now 13-year-olds tell us. They have a lot of thoughts about what matters and how to change the world around them. Listen to them. I listen to my interns, and I now have a playlist that I still don't know how to access, but they created it for me. So that's my challenge to you all. Be present, be advocates, bring people to the table, and be a good partner.
All right, Preston, 60 seconds to bring us home.
The biggest thing I would say is collaboration. We're hearing it all day long. The collaboration is so important because so many of us have missions that overlap. And we need to basically partner with each other to drive the scale. And we also need to be very innovative in our approaches. I mean, today, you know, we heard the people on the ground, right, they know more than money, right? So we've got to be innovative. We need the outcomes, right? And we know where we're trying to get to, but we also have to remember that this is not, what we're doing is not just for today. I don't know about you, but the work today is about legacy. It's about our children, it's about our grandchildren. So I know by the time I'm finished, it's okay, but it needs to continue on. If we can lay the foundation and the blueprints today, right, that we know that can continue to go forward, we can only do that through collaboration and partnerships, right, to go forward. The last thing I would say is, you know, the impact investors, and we hear this, we ask about the 42 million. You know, we hear all the time that those investors are having a hard time finding the people on the ground. The people on the ground are having a hard time finding their investors. We've got to find a way to bridge that so that we can go ahead and execute, do the blocking and tackling execution to execute on the solutions today that we need for the future. All right? And it's a real problem for us because this is a journey, right? And it requires, we're talking about ecosystems and processes. We've got to put all those pieces together. I can do my piece, but I cannot do my piece alone and have an impact on the future. I can do my piece and I can partner with somebody else, and we can get there together, right? And so the very last thing I will share, and we heard this earlier from Janet, in this society today, we must have empathy for each other. Our humanity is tough right now. I have 4 children, and I fear, right, how they feel, the emotional, mental health capacity that they're all dealing with. It's a lot. And we need to be able to, as our leaders, bring that empathy to every day to the work that we do, to make the change that we really want for the future.
Thank you all so much, and please a round of applause for a wonderful panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was awesome. And I just love the idea of radical collaboration because that is what we're all about, and I think everybody in this room is committed to that. As our next panel is getting seated, as these folks are heading off the stage, for those of you in some of the back tables, if you want to move up and kind of fill in and meet some other people in here, we want to encourage you right now to do that. And hi, Kenneth. How are you? So I know some people could only come for the morning, some people are here all day, some people afternoon, but I want to encourage anybody who wants to meet some more people, Blaine, Tara, you guys come on up and fill in some of these tables and meet some of the other folks as we're getting the next panel. It is my true pleasure to introduce another one of our Inclusive Leader Award winners who's actually leading this panel, and that is Sheetal Shah. She's the Senior Advisor for Strategic Partnerships for the U.S. Secretary of Education. Her outstanding panel represents K-12, higher education, industry leaders working together to create a diverse talent pipeline. We'll give it like 2 minutes for those pictures, and then we'll get reapportioned here with people sitting different tables, meeting different people, and then we'll start. And we'll be good with the 2 o'clock start. We'll be back on schedule. Yeah. And you want to do the birthday?